Well, hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining this weekly study. I know the last 2 weeks we deviated off of our lesson plan a little bit, but today we'll get back into 1 Samuel chapter 17. I pray that you all had a very blessed Christmas and a Happy New Year, and just looking forward to what God's going to do in this upcoming year. And again, I pray that the study of His Word will be a foundation for you as it is for me, knowing that no matter what happens all around us, His Word never changes. And so as you look at the screen today, we are remembering that we're back in 1 Samuel chapter 17, and we left off with verse 31 last time. And so picking up with verse 32, Vayomer David el Shaul. And so David said to Saul, Yipol lev Adam alav. And what I want to point out to you here is what David said to Saul. Again, this whole battle with Goliath is, as you remember, being set up here, and the foundations are being laid. And somehow, Saul should have been the one who goes out to fight Goliath. David comes, starts talking. We'll just say starts talking a big talk, said a lot of words that moved people. And obviously, we know that God was in charge here, and God was setting a foundation, setting a stage to work a great miracle. But there are just little tidbits of information in here in the Hebrew that is somewhat clouded or lost in the English translation. And so there's this exchange going on where, Saul's maybe feeling a little bit guilty here and trying to dissuade David from doing this. And David said to him something, it's translated as let not fail any heart of man because of him. But the Hebrew is a little bit more interesting. You'll notice the word lev, which is the lamed with the sere verb underneath, sere vowel, underneath, creates the word heart with a bait, pronounced as a v sound. So it's lev, but then there's a makaf there that ties these two words together. So you say them as one word. So it'd be lev Adam. And what's interesting here is the word Adam is the word Adam. It is the word used for man. It is also a word used for earth, because God created Adam, or man, from the earth, and that's why he is called an Adam. And many times the earth is called Adamah in that same reasoning. So it really wasn't given to him as a name originally. It was more of where he came from and his identification. And so it's important here. There are many different words that could be used for man. He could have used Ish, which is somewhat of a man that's known to be a husband. There's Gavor, which is a valiant man. And obviously, because all these guys are fearful and afraid, what David's, through the word of God, is pointing out here, that the heart of the baser side of man, the earthly side, whenever Adam is used, it's not talking about spiritual things. It's talking about the baser side, the non-spiritual side. And so David's pointing that out here in the Hebrew, saying that the heart, and the word yipol means to fall. So it's falling of the heart in the carnal side, which means there was no spirituality going on. There was no faith. There was no trust. There was nothing outside of their own human interests that they were relying upon, and it was all their own strength. Maybe is a better way to say it. And then this word alav, it's obviously translated quite enhanced to say because of him, but alav is just a word upon. It's typically used that. So it's let not there be a falling upon their heart because of what Goliath is saying. So just a little bit of tidbit there of information. And so we go to verse 33, and of course Saul is still trying to just not allow what he sees as just a horrible demise. So he says, Vayomer Shaul el David lo tuchal lachet, that you're not able to go against him. And then he uses this word for fighting, and it's lahi lachem. And you can see that the word lechem is in here, the word for bread. Remember how it's tied very closely to the word for fight and for battle. And so he's trying to tell him, okay, you're just a young guy. You don't have any training. You don't have any background. You're small in stature. There's all these things, all these reasons you shouldn't be doing this. And here Goliath was trained from his youth, where you are still in your youth. And then what you don't see in the English is this punctuation mark at the end of Urav, and that is this samach, which is used as a punctuation where it's just let's stop. The writer is emphasizing, because remember in biblical Hebrew, there was no punctuation, there were no vowels, there were no spaces between the letters. All the letters were consonants, and they were all just one run-on sentence. In fact, many of the Jewish sages will say that the Torah is one sentence, starts at in the beginning, Bereshit bara, and it goes to the end of Deuteronomy, and it's all one word. And so the only way the writers could emphasize where there would be time to stop and think is by putting these punctuation marks. And so the samach is put there. And you don't see that in English because we have those punctuation marks all taken care of, and the importance is lost. But there was a point here where the writer just had to say, look at the impact that was being made. Look at what was being said, and think about what's happening here. It's kind of a stop and think about it. That think who Goliath is, think who David is. And then with that in mind, we go to verse 34, and David starts with his defense here. Vayomer David el Shaul roe chaya avdeka. I used to keep your servant, meaning, he taking a kind of a lower form of himself. He doesn't say, I was this high-powered, valiant shepherd. He just says that I was a servant to my father, Aviv. And so I would watch the sheep. And then what's interesting here, it says, Uva ha'ari va'et hadavov. And he's saying here that a lion came and a bear, but look at how it's worded very different in the English. The English breaks it apart and says when a lion or a bear would come, but the Hebrew doesn't say that, because there's the article before the ari, which is a lion. So it really says the lion. We see the vav preposition, which is, or conjunction, excuse me, which is the word and, the aleph with the sigol underneath, and the tav is the direct object pointing towards the bear. So we basically see the lion and the bear, giving the indication that they both came at the same time, which is even a greater wonder here. And so look how David describes this, that the lion and the bear came and took a lamb out of the flock. In verse 35, he says, and I went out and after it and struck it and pulled the lamb out of the animal's mouth, and of course he wasn't too happy about it, and then it rose against me, and I caught it by its beard and struck it and killed it. And what struck me the first time I read through this, and obviously I've prepared this lesson for a few weeks before getting a little distracted with the other thoughts, is what always struck me is that where is David saying, oh, the power of God came upon me and overtook me, and by God's miraculous power, I was able to do this, and in my own strength, I'm nothing. This is kind of what we're looking for. We're not accustomed to seeing David being braggadocious here, and it bothered me. And for a couple of weeks, and then today, as I was reviewing this, something caught my eye that I want to point out to you, that David truly is glorifying God in this statement. And again, you don't see it in the English, but what you see in the Hebrew is underneath the words for he struck it, which is vehikti, it is in what's called a hifil form. It's a verb, and it's in a hifil. And in Hebrew, there are 7 different verb conjugations, and hifil being one of them, which is deemed as being causative. So the implication behind this is not that David had so much of to do with it on his own, but in these words, he's saying, I was caused, that there was something inside of me, and he, we attribute it to God. I believe he does also, because the subsequent verses pick up on that same line of thought. And so it makes a lot of sense when David is saying here that something rose up inside of me and caused me to strike this. And then we look at the next verse and we see for vs32 salti, and delivered, also in a hifil form. So God's rose up within him, caused me to strike it, caused me to deliver. And then when the animal came back again, we get to this next word where he says he caught it. It's vehesed zakti, and I caught it again in a hifil form. And the same thing when you get to caught it by its beard, and he struck it, and he killed it. All of these are in a hifil form, which is a causative, where David is, through these words, able to give glory to God, saying that something rose up within him. And of course, it doesn't use the word God, but we understand it. And David is giving acknowledgement to it, that these things were caused by something within him working through him. And I think that's just, again, the beauty of the Hebrew language. And then he says he took both the lion and the bear, and again killed it in hifil form, in the causative. And he said, your servant here will do the same to this uncircumcised Philistine, and he shall be like one of them. And then as we come to the end of this study here, he's making another strong statement about what he felt in his heart that Goliath was doing. This word cheref is defiled, but it is in a PL form, which is a very intensified form using the strongest language. And so this shows that David was truly, truly upset by what Goliath was saying and what he was representing, in how it affected the Lord, how it affected God. And that's where David's real heart was. He wasn't so caring about, Israel being successful. He wasn't caring about, whether one army conquered the other. What was most important to him right now is that God had been mocked. God had been defied. We're going to just open up that word here and see how that karaf is to bring reproach, that God had, that the Philistine had brought reproach against God, that he brought dishonor to his name, that God's reputation was being attacked here, and David would have none of it. It was shaking him as deeply as possible, and it just caused him to rise up with that same hifil form of being caused to rise up against Goliath here, was the same thing that caused him to rise up against the bear and the lion when he had to defend his father's flock. So again, the beauty of these Hebrew words, and the humbling attitude that's I just see in here, of how God left us such a beautiful witness of how he worked in the lives of his people that are recorded here in the scriptures, and how fortunate we are to have these tools to study them today. So I hope that you are blessed by this. I hope that you are encouraged. We'll have to wait another week before we maybe get to the battle, but I pray that God will strengthen you and help you to understand that the battles we fight, that God will encourage you. God will lift you up. He'll cause something to rise up within you that will allow you to conquer with strength that is not your own, if you truly, as we do, know where our strength comes from, and that is from God. So God bless you, and I pray that you have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.